Supernatural Season 5, the end of an era, because, yeah, I really am glad that I went back and watched this from the ground up, because there's just so many subtle things that just let you realize that this truly was envisioned to be a five-season story arc, where it starts off as something simple, and then it turns into something that much greater, where all of this was designed to bring Lucifer from wherever the heck he was, and then try to have Michael confront him, and just, wow, just the amount of effort and time that had to have been put into that. Sure, we don't entirely know the hugest origin of what caused Yellow Eyes to do that and such, but at the same time, we don't entirely need to, because the Angels, they wanted Lucifer to come out, even though Castiel did chicken out at the last second, and then that Ruby knew that Lilith was the last seal, although whether or not Lilith knew that, I'm not so sure about, and Lilith and Yellow Eyes definitely were at least partially in league together at some point, so yeah. Just the amount of planning on both sides that had to be done in order to cause this to occur, because yes, the Angels were perfectly willing to let all these things occur, but problems occurred because, Anna trying to prevent the Winchesters from ever being born, and causing, Ural to become less trusting of humans because of what happened to the younger version of him, even though that older version should have remembered what Sam and Dean looked like, so that's a little bit of a continuity error, a bit. Yeah, her turning traitor like that, I'm not the hugest fan of it, but at the same time, based on what I said in the last video, it does kind of fit her character at the same time, because given how she questions so much, she's just questioning maybe that if we could just get rid of the vessel, that'll prevent everything from happening. But of course, that's just getting rid of Lucifer's main vessel, not his backup vessel or temporary vessel, whatever you want to call it, because I can't help but feel like that there's some kind of unsaid rule or pattern when it comes to the vessels that I'm missing, especially since I'd be willing to bet that the same thing applies to Angels too, and we just haven't been told all of that, because as last season showed, we knew that, what's-his-face, Jerry did ask for Castiel to come into him initially, but didn't enjoy the experience, so he goes back to his family, but that causes them to be in more danger. He gets mortally wounded, but upon seeing that his daughter, out of an effort to save him, invited Castiel into her, and he's like, no, don't you dare do that. Take me. Yeah. But he knows that he's dead anyway, so he's like, yeah, if I'm dying, at least let me do some good from the other side. And Castiel's like, all right. He's like, all right, status quo restored. Yeah. Yeah, but I don't know, I just can't help but feel like that idea is going to change somewhat, just like how in the Buffyverse, the way magic was done during the first couple seasons that it was introduced is different than what happened in season 6. There's just some way that they had of explaining it that caused the lore to effectively change. So I can't help but feel like that this part of the lore is going to change here. Yeah. But, again, what Anna did, even though I don't totally like it, at the same time it makes sense. And it also makes sense why Mary was genuinely shocked in the first season. Although I don't know if Castiel overrode all memories she had of Yellow Eyes at the same time. He might have. Right. other developments in this season. I do like the continuation of what they did to expand the character of Crowley, because last season he was just there. Now the expansion of him being the king of the crossroads, that's kind of sudden, but given how they all of a sudden made Gabriel from just a trickster to an angel who somewhat supports the cause, but doesn't totally agree with the social order of things anyway. That was a big bump, so it's kind of similar here, although when you had the character of, what was it, Brian or Brady at that meeting of the gods, because there's definitely a couple of gods there, or name cards that I have no clue where they were going with that, but when that guy calls Gabriel Loki, there is an Odin there, but Odin didn't say anything in regards to Gabriel at all. Well, given how Loki is his, I guess technically illegitimate, I'm not too familiar with that lore, both the Marvel version and the non-Marvel version, alright? But I guess that kind of tips me off, but given how they only called him Loki the one time, but him going out in that way, well, that kinda made up for it. It was kind of wimpy, but at the same time, it's supposed to be wimpy with these shows, because it isn't supposed to be a big, grand spectacle of stuff like when you have the big battle scenes in Buffy. Yeah, they actually feel out of place, because it's not supposed to be this big, grand spectacle where things are crumbling all around them and people are running for their lives. No. It's supposed to be 2 or 3 people going at each other, and it's supposed to feel personal. Is that not what happened here when Castiel tied Michael? Huh? That was personal. You could tell Lucifer was pissed at him for that. So there you go. It fits much more in line with the show, even though it feels wimpish, but as I keep saying, it's the strength of the dialogue. Guy who played Lucifer when Lucifer was inhabiting that other guy, I forget his real name. Yeah, he did good portraying him there, although unfortunately I can't help but feel like he drew a little too much influence from whoever played Yellow Eyes in the first 2 seasons, because I was trying to put my finger on why this seemed familiar, and that they kind of went for that same angle, even though Jared obviously played Lucifer differently when he had Lucifer in Sam's body, so I'll give them that. Bobby, thankfully being older now, I really understood and felt for what the character was going through this season. Well, yeah, he hates his own situation, but still does everything he can to help the guys out, even though, as he tells them, see this? This is a bullet that I kept planning to fire into myself, and every day I look at it, and every day I put it away. Because as much as I hate this, I'm not ready to leave just yet. That's not literally what he says, obviously, but that's the subliminal message, and he knows. I'm in it to the end. So that was nice. The characterization of the 4 horsemen here, I really enjoyed that, even though many would argue the guys just keep charging in there with brute force, trying to beat the horsemen. Well, that's their initial plan, but it doesn't always end up working out that way, because war, all that happened was they realized, yes, the essence slash force slash idea of war can never be beat, but at the same time, at this moment, war is a person. So you figure out how to beat, trick, outsmart the person. And voila! War had an opening exposed that the guys found, and then they took advantage of it. And then they're able to get the ring off of him, and that caused War to lose enough power that the vessel couldn't sustain him after a little bit, because I think they still had to exercise him. But yeah, so that's how you beat war. You just do better. Famine. Famine points out that the cult or the exorcism idea won't work on him, but famine is supposed to be feeding, is the ideal, where a dark force or a bad event has occurred, most likely after war, and people are not sick because of the other horsemen that I'll get to, but they're in fear, hunger pains, and blah blah blah. So famine gets its energy from feeding off other sources and then projecting it outward. So like with, spoiler alert, the first Ghost Rider movie, the Ghost Rider or Sam here can't go after the entity of fear, but they can go after everything that fear is feeding off of and weaken that to the point where fear slash famine can't feed off anything and then is crippled enough to have its vessel destroyed and pop. Smart. You use fear's own strength against it. That was great. And then you've got the, this isn't the term that they use for the third horseman, but parasite, because they're going after the interpretation that this horseman is about sickness rather than conquest, because conquest, there would be way too much overlap with war and famine to warrant it being a different character, but sickness and parasites, that you can do its own thing with, but it kind of makes sense that the issue with that horseman was so fast, because how do you beat sickness? Well, you just have the will to beat it, because you know how if you watch any medical situation set for the sake of argument before World War I, okay? If you watch basically any medical situation or when people get sick with a fever before then, you notice all they're doing is bundling people up if they're cold or laying wet washcloths on their head if they're hot. And they're like, I've done all I can. It's up to him now. What? Well, yeah, because back then, medicine was so poor that back then, it was just, is a person's will to live slash immune system greater than the disease? So that's how they overcome parasites there. They're able to just demonstrate that they have the ability to resist the sickness or whatever parasite was causing in them, and then they get rid of the ring. And like with war, now they're able, the vessel's strength is weak enough that they can exercise the spirit out of that vessel the normal way. But unlike war, Parasite knows what they're going to do and knows that without the ring, he can't win the fight, not that he really cares, so he exercises himself, and then he just, pop, goes away. But the battle had been won, they just didn't finish it. But it's also a different way of flipping the script. It's not the same thing over and over again. So then they're going in there to challenge Death, but even though they're going in their guns blazing, Death as Dean's approaching him, not immediately, but during their conversation, which was a great conversation. I just love that scene. The advantage of being 10 years older from when I last saw this, because I remember when I saw this scene for the first time back then, and I'm like, wait, you're just gonna give it to him? Like, what the heck? They had to take it away from the other three, and you knew that they had done that, and you also knew that they'd have to come after you last. So you're just gonna give it to them? But as Death says, how do you beat /trick/trap Death? And Dean realizes, without saying it, you don't. Because, yeah, Death himself says, I'm older than literally everything except maybe God. Neither of us remember now. But that means that there was a time where it was just the two of them. So, you know, he just has a totally different perspective on things. Because, yeah, you can't really beat death. Oh, make yourself immortal. But here's the thing. If you look at the definition of immortal, there's two different definitions. One is the Disney/fairy tale definition, which is you can't die or be killed in any way, shape, or form. Second definition, which is what pretty much everything else has accepted, is you can't die of age, and there's very few sickness things that can kill you. But pretty much every other way of death can happen. Now, there you are. There is no way to beat death. The only way to get that ring was for Death to just hand it over, which he did. Because he's annoyed at what Lucifer is doing to him, even though between the lines you can tell, because Lucifer is telling him to do things that are so similar to his natural job anyway, he's far less annoyed than he should have been. He was willing to wait millennia for this moment to occur. So yeah. Great writing. I know I spent a lot of time on this topic, but I felt it was just an important one to bring up, and yeah. So, yeah. And then trying to give Dean the somewhat happy ending, even though what he really wanted to do was help Sam, but he's like, I've just survived the apocalypse. All that's left now is silly demon stuff from the first couple of seasons. Because, like, as Sam mentions, you remember when we used to hunt wraiths and ragus? How simple it was? He's like, yeah. Compared to what I've just done, that is nothing. But he knows there's enough people out there to take care of it now. It was kind of sudden that he did that with Lisa, but last season did give the possibility that there was a little bit more to it. It wasn't explicitly stated, but you could tell if they had wanted to continue with it, they could have, and they did. So it's a nice way to end it, even though by the time they were getting done with filming this season, they were fairly certain, if not completely certain, that they were coming back with another season, partially because Jared and Jensen have been contracted for another season, so Eric still decided to end it the way that he wanted it to, but he left the little hook to let you know the story might not be over, but my story is done. And then, to get into the special features of that season, of this season, that DVD game that they have on the last disc, not really a fan. Just give us a list of special features like you normally do, okay? Because I was very interested in what the producers had to say about their thing, but like the End of Time experts, not a fan of that. And then that Ghost Facers series of webisodes, even though the last one isn't on this season set or the sixth season set, which is when they actually released it. But if you watch that last episode where the Ghost Facers meet Castiel, you can tell that it's set during this season right here, which is why I'm mentioning it now. I do like the fact that they did that because it makes sense that they would continue to try and do their things, not listening to Sam and Dean. Sorry about the camera being shaky. Here the hand won't stop twitching. Yeah, it makes sense that they would do that, not learn from their mistakes, come this close to quitting, and then they realize, nah, there's still more of this stuff out there. We got to take care of it, even though, let's face it, they care more about becoming popular than taking care of the situation. They're doing what I was basically trying to do at the start of my first YouTube channel, where I was trying to be popular at one point and just get a lot of content out there, whereas now I don't care at all about being popular, thank God, and just do this when I feel like it. That's the way to do it. But I am glad that they decided to do that. It's stupid, but, you know, it fits right in. And that one with Castiel, a nice subtle lesson to try and get them to learn in humility, but they aren't going to listen at all, especially since there's not going to be any follow-up. Right. All right. That takes care of this era of the show. Now I gotta watch season 6 again, which I do remember the very beginning, the very end, and one other thing that occurs in like the middle of the season, but I have no context for any of that, so it's going to be very close to a new experience for me because I really don't remember that much. Here's to hoping that I continue to enjoy this show, because I know Eric gets replaced by a different person, but I can't remember if it was the Sarah Chick or Robert Sr. I know I've seen both of them as showrunners. See ya.